everybody. Welcome to another episode of We're Two Opinionated.
Hi, everyone. We're your hosts,
Vitasta.
and Vela.
So, Vitasta, how are you?
I am great. Really happy to be recording our third podcast.
I know, it's absolutely exciting.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people were upset that we didn't have an absolutely tally last time. Yeah, but it's really hard to edit all of that. But
And I also think that, I said absolutely a lot.
yeah, you did.
But you didn't as much.
Yeah, so I think that tally just stays for me, I guess.
Yeah, because my tally was how many times I don't get the point.
Oh my God. I was looking back at the video and the podcast. Actually, I was watching the video and I realized, why isn't she getting my point? Wait, what's happening? And I think while recording, I realized that I was becoming like, bro, what is wrong with you? Like, I thought there was a rude tone in the podcast while we were recording it. I think, to be fair, in my defense, while we were recording the podcast, I got my period. So the hot flashes, if you're watching the video, you can see how I'm going like back and forth with my hair. It was just really hot. So I apologize if I was rude to you in that podcast.
No, oh my gosh, you were not rude. I
Yeah.
feel like rewatching it, I was just like, why am I not getting the point? What is wrong with me? Because I was just like asking the dumbest question.
And I was like, wait, what's happening? Why isn't she getting my point? I feel stupid talking about this right now. Anyway, so, really happy. Thank you so much, all of you, for showing us the love and support. And to all my friends, all our friends
Yeah.
who are taking the time out and listening to a podcast, dude, that really makes it so special.
And those that are like eagerly, waiting for the next episode and are messaging us saying, where is it?
I know. So, should we do a podcast every week? What do you think?
I think we should.
We can ask our viewers and our listeners if that's something, you guys would want us to do every week, then we are cool for it, right?
Yeah.
So, Vela, today's topic is a little bit intense as compared to the last episode. We're going to talk about imposter syndrome.
Right. It's definitely going to be an insightful discussion.
Absolutely. And, Vela, that nagging voice in the back of your head that tells you that, oh, you're not enough. Let's say you're a business owner or you just got a promotion or you're at a space or, somewhere in your life at a successful stage and you feel like you don't deserve it. You feel like, how did I get here? Like a self-doubt.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
so that's what imposter syndrome is.
Right. So, and according to Merriam-Webster, it is a psychological condition that is characterized by persistent doubt concerning one's abilities or accomplishments, and is accompanied by the fear of being exposed as a fraud, despite evidence of one's ongoing success. It's a term even used by First Lady Michelle Obama, who encouraged young girls to not fall prey to imposter syndrome, which really underscores just how prevalent it is. Because someone as influential and successful as Michelle Obama saying that and using her platform to kind of highlight and, warn young girls, if you will, that just shows how prevalent it is. Why are you laughing?
Because how you just went like that. No, I can only imagine why a person like Michelle Obama would talk like it. It is a phenomena that, transcends generations, impacting people of all genders and backgrounds. Imposter syndrome was first identified by psychologists Pauline Clance and Suzanne Imes in the late 1970s. They described it as an internal experience of intellectual phoniness, particularly among high achieving women. Right? However, we know that imposter syndrome affects people of all genders and backgrounds, like we just talked about it. And like I can imagine why they would have they would have come up with a term like that, right? Especially in the 1970s,
Absolutely.
where women were like finally getting a space in corporate world, and like getting access to like places where always men were allowed.
Yeah, especially because there was like I think a quota of like you had to include or hire at least one woman in your office, and that could definitely lead to like not feeling, you know, as par
Right.
to like your male
Having
colleagues.
high self-doubt.
Absolutely.
What did I do to like whatever, like just am I just lucky, or did I actually like deserve to be here?
Exactly. This, especially like the deserve to be here. I feel like that's
Yeah.
definitely the underlying theme of imposter syndrome.
And I know we're not alone. Imposter syndrome is pervasive, lurking in the shadows of, are you okay? In the shadows of boardrooms, Instagram feeds, and even the comfort of our own homes. But why is it so prevalent? And why do we often fail to recognize it? That's the real question.
Yeah, that is definitely the real question. Because if it's something that's happening to like everybody, why do we feel like we're all alone and just, you know, at the center of something like not being able to recognize it? And
I think we are not able to recognize it because we see it's a very Western concept to label things. You know, like, sorry, I'm not hating.
yeah,
I saw a
Thanks.
micro expression on your face for a microsecond. So I
thanks
was
for
just,
clarifying.
yeah. So, you know, like, this must be an ongoing syndrome amongst people, especially the young crowd. Not just the young crowd, but especially. So imposter syndrome ke bare mein nobody talks about, you know, because people probably don't even know that it's a term that exists.
Right, right. I think that kind of lends us to kind of dissecting it further and
Yeah.
kind of giving it a space, if you will, in the social media spheres.
Social media spheres, everything in all ways and norms, especially in India, because of the cultural aspect to imposter syndrome in our day to day lives, is that, you know, how there's so much competitiveness out there. There's gender roles. There's so many things that we'll
Right.
cover later, but
Let's kind of dive into a little bit of dissection.
yeah. So imposter syndrome can manifest in various ways and forms. There isn't a starters kind of a definition to it, but it is identified in different types. So I think there are like,
There are 5 types,
Yeah.
which are coined by Dr. Young, one of the psychologists kind of doing research in imposter syndrome.
right. And I think when Vela and I were doing the research on this is, well, when I suggested this topic is because I personally feel like I might have not an issue, but I feel like I kind of do carry this on, it's like a chip on my shoulder, right? And, and and I do resonate with some of it is because sometimes I feel like the nagging voice in my head, you know, I'm just like, am I enough?
Yeah.
Do I deserve this?
Imposter syndrome is the nagging head, the nagging voice inside her head, but the nagging voice outside of her head is me.
That's true. Could not have agreed more to that. So, Vela, what are the 5 types of imposter syndromes that is coined by Dr. Young?
So I'll list them out, and then we'll kind of explain them as we go along.
Yeah, perfect.
Right? So the first one is the perfectionist, the soloist. Then there's the expert, the super person, and the natural genius.
I feel like when I was reading about all of this, remember we were having this conversation in my kitchen while we were making some coffee and breakfast.
And it was
remember.
too hot, yes.
Yeah, it was too hot. A perfectionist would set extremely high standards whenever they're doing a task for themselves, not for other people, right? And they feel like they have to meet those standards. And if they can't meet those standards, what they've set for themselves, they would rather just not do it, you know? And like, I'm a little stunned because, you know, because I feel like that is so
it's
much,
her.
yeah, that is
It's
so
her.
much like me. It's like they often, I'm going to read this out. They often obsess over minor mistakes and are highly self critical, leading to a constant fear of being exposed as incompetent. So, like, I remember when we were going to start this podcast, right? And I was like, Vela was like, chalo, let's do it. You know, we are so like well informed. We do this, we that. And I was like, yes, Vela, I know. Like, we are, but I feel like we have to be in control of every little detail that is being said out there, you know.
Right.
And because of that, our podcast was delayed so much because I wasn't happy with my information or the information that I collected, even the mics, the camera, and everything, you know, those things that I said, uh, set for myself. If I'm not achieving it, I feel like, what if somebody is just like, what are these people doing? Like, are they pulling out information just from their asses? You know, that self-doubt. So the perfectionist, like, I resonate with that, though I'm working on it. Because it's like, I read this quote somewhere. It talked about how, like, you are always meeting your expectations, but you kind of don't, because every time you achieve that little expectation, you're again setting the bar high.
Oh, that's lovely.
Right?
Yeah.
So, like, I understand that. So, like, I'm trying to understand that. Like, I completed this task and I'm like, I'm not satisfied with it, because when I complete it, I've set the bar even higher.
Right.
So, yeah, so the perfectionist just like, yeah.
And the next one is the soloist.
Yeah.
Vitasta, did you want to explain that one as well?
Sure, I can. A soloist might feel like they have to accomplish tasks on their own without help or support from others. They might avoid asking for assistance or delegating tasks because they fear being perceived as incompetent or incapable.
This is also her to a T.
Well, not really. Honestly speaking, when I was reading more about it, I realized this is actually not me. I don't feel like when I'm not giving a task to someone, it's not because I might feel like I'm incompetent. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
The soloist is somebody like, let's say, for example, if I'm giving you a task, or I'll avoid to give you a task, just because you might think I'm giving it to you because I can't do it myself or I'm incapable of it. I think otherwise. I won't give you a task because I think you are incapable to do it. Do you get it?
Yes.
This was an example. I'm not saying that you can't do it. I'm just telling you. That's what a soloist is. A soloist.
Not triggering my anxiety.
Oh, I'm sorry.
with
Oh, I love
these
you.
words.
I love you. I'm sorry. No, I mean,
No, I know.
તું સમજી ને હું શું કહું છું તને? The soloist is
No,
not.
no, I absolutely understand. It's
I don't identify as that. That's what I'm saying. So
Yeah,
stop
that's
trying to put your Western ass labels on. No, I'm just kidding. So let's talk about the third type of imposter syndrome. Well, not type. A part you could recognize or not recognize, well, relate to, is the expert one.
right. So the experts believe that they need to know everything before taking on a challenge or a project. They're afraid of being seen as inexperienced or unknowledgeable. So they may avoid opportunities for growth or advancement to avoid risk of failure.
Yeah.
I feel like that's definitely really relatable, considering like I often find myself not taking on things because I feel like I need to learn more about something, or I feel like I wouldn't succeed.
Yeah, no, definitely. I feel like I relate to that too, to some extent, because I am like that. If I don't know or don't have the knowledge in it, I would avoid. Like, I remember like getting a call from a news channel to go on a debate for the first time, and my first answer was no. I was like, I don't know, like, it's a live debate, like, oh my god, like, you know. And then my mom made me realize, she's like, it's fine. Like, you do your research, you go for it. Like, you're freaking graduate. Like, you know what you're going to talk about. It was a subject that I have some expertise on.
Right.
That's when she made me realize, like, it's okay, like, but you're right. Like, the first thought, nahi yaar, I can't do it. That kind of a thing.
Yeah, like not feeling competent enough in their like knowledge set or
Right.
skill set. even,
Exactly.
right?
In a fear to be labeled as fraudulent later.
Right.
Right?
Absolutely. Like this person clearly didn't know what they were talking about, despite even like because you actually did study political science, so you actually are qualified to talk in a debate,
Right.
right? Like you absolutely are, but
Yeah.
it's that kind of feeling, like, and that's what we're trying to underscore here.
Exactly. And yeah, so we can move on to the fourth one. And I don't want to we're not experts here. Again, these are just our opinions. These are topics that we find interesting and we do the research on, we want to talk about, so that maybe somebody out there who's listening to this can recognize or feel like they relate to it.
Right, and that they're not too alone. Like
Exactly.
they're like we're there with them, right? Like we're trying to create a community of, gals and pals.
Exactly. A community of We're Two Opinionated people, right?
Yeah,
And these are our opinions, and again, some experiences. So
right.
yeah.
And some research.
And some research, of course. There's a lot of
Opinions.
research that goes into
Yeah.
the topics we want to talk about. It's not just, again, this is the imposter syndrome in us talking about it. All right. So, what's the fourth one, Villa?
It's the super person. It's where you feel as though you must be the hardest worker and reach the highest levels of achievement in your field. And if that standard isn't met, then you're a fraud. So it's kind of like somebody, let's say, in a corporate field, if they're not able to reach that like highest like CEO or CFO level, then they feel as though their whole career was a fraud,
Yeah.
right? Like that's kind of like an example of that, if you will.
And I feel like this happens a lot amongst young achievers,
Absolutely.
you know,
Yeah.
because if especially I feel like I'm again going to go in today's age where like, but my point is, doctors and engineers are not the only jobs that are paying these days. There are influencers, there are creators, there are small business owners. Opportunities have grown, but the lack of respect and the lack of reciprocation that those other entrepreneurs get from the society, especially in India, might make one feel like, oh, maybe I'm not enough, or maybe, do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
remember I was at a focus group discussion the other day. We were talking about uh, talent acquisition and retention and stuff like that. And I mentioned how, influencers also earn money these days. And I remember somebody just laughed.
Whoa.
Yeah, somebody just laughed. "वो तो क्या, that is not a job." I was like, that's not a job. That's a content creation. That's still something that you're doing and earning money out of, right? So imagine being that person and not being able to like be recognized as someone who's working hard. So I can
Right.
imagine how that one person might feel like, they have to achieve a certain level of followers, they have to achieve a certain level of likes on Instagram or TikTok or wherever the hell that is, to be recognized as someone.
And I think our definition of what a job or what employment is has kind of changed, especially with this notion of hustle culture,
Exactly.
right? Like where you are like just seeing all these CEOs, these people just having these big cars, like all of these corporate holidays and all of that. When, like, yeah, that's great, that's amazing, but you also have to recognize that it's not what level you achieve, but it's what you're happy with achieving.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And sometimes we fail to recognize these things, and that's okay. That's why we're here. So we can talk about these things. So the fifth type of imposter syndrome is the natural genius. Do you want to shed some light on that?
Yeah, so this type feels as though they are a fraud because they view themselves as not being naturally competent or intelligent. The thought process is that if they weren't able to master a task or a skill immediately, then they must not belong and are a fraud.
Ooh, like that is so heavy. Like imagine somebody who's feeling that way constantly every day in their lives, and like
I actually think I relate to this.
yeah,
Because, like, perhaps it's because ever since I was a wee little child, wee little lass, I always was like very good at picking up things. But then as you grow older, obviously things become a little difficult. Things, things become harder. And you have to put in a little bit more effort with each growing age, or with each growing skill set. And I think the notion that you absolutely have to get something at the first try is extremely flawed, because there's a reason that the saying practice makes perfect exists, because it does. Like, you can't just become a master at something just by learning it. And I think for this, I felt like when I was learning Korean, I can speak Korean really well, but I always compared myself to other people, the amount of years they put in versus how many years I put in. And I would always think I'm not good enough because I put in more years, right? Even though I speak well and I know I do, but it feels like I'm not competent enough, right? And if people hear me speak, or if I say something, then what if they're like, oh, this bitch, she doesn't know how to speak. What is this?
No, I definitely agree to that and relate to it too, because I feel like sometimes we're all like that, There's this, again, the nagging voice, the always in the shadows, always like, what if, what if we're not good enough? What if I can't pick this up? I'm really proud of myself that I'm able to recognize this now, and I think a lot of it has to do with my immediate support group, especially Vela, my sister, and my close friends. I am able to recognize now that I picked up a sport like badminton at a later age in my life, in the sense I'm not old, but sports is something you pick up when you're young. I used to play basketball and volleyball growing up, but I picked up badminton just 3 years ago, and I'm playing now, and I'm just so happy about it. So last night when I played pickleball for the first time, I again had this mindset oh shit, what if I fail? What if I don't know what to do with this?
And spoiler alert, she didn't fail.
Yeah, I didn't, and I was quite surprised. Not that I'm a genius or anything, but again, the self-doubt is always lingering. It's always there, in any goddamn task that,
Absolutely.
I want to pick up, or that's the first thought, and I don't want it to be like that. Vela, I want to do something without thinking. Yeah, you can't be in a dreamy land, ye kar lenge, wo kar lenge. I don't want to be like that.
Delusional.
I don't want to be delulu. I want to be, but I don't want that negative thought first. Oh no, I can't do this.
Right. There should be a certain level of optimism and even just kind of an encouragement from yourself, from within.
Right.
Because I feel like unless you try it and are optimistic that you'll be able to learn it, you can't really actually learn it. If you're negative about it, then you'll shut down. Your body will shut down. And then it'll become one of those it'll become the expert thing.
Right.
Right? Where you're not, you're missing out opportunities.
Exactly.
You wouldn't have gone and played so damn well yesterday if you hadn't taken the opportunity with some level of optimism.
Right. I agree. And it wasn't so damn well. But again,
it was.
Vela, please, coming back to the point, thank you for your appreciation.
Let me say my opinion.
Yeah, please do. especially when it's all the nice things about me. So, Vela, in Indian culture, societal roles and expectations can play a significant role in exacerbating imposter syndrome, and
Right. And like, do you mind kind of clarifying what you mean by that?
like, how in Indian societies, culture intersects with the phenomena. Like, in the sense, it's very different from the Western world. Like, I'll give you some examples. How, like, we have high achievement pressure here, cultural modesty, family expectations, gender norms, comparison culture.
Right, right.
Oh, God. Stigma surrounding mental health. So these
Definitely.
things can really, like, fuel the exacerbation of imposter syndrome
Right.
here
Absolutely.
here in India. Like, comparison, like, when you talk about comparison culture, like, growing up, there are certain expectations out of you, especially in school. Yeah, in school, kids would parents would compare their kids, and they would be like, "Beta, your cousin scored this much. Your
Yes.
best friend scored this much." Like, these things you don't realize. People freaking don't realize how these things affect you in the long term.
Absolutely. And I don't think that it's just limited to just India, but like definitely Indian culture as a whole. Even with the diaspora, where I've also faced similar things where, oh, do you know that like even though we don't have like public scoring systems, we still had, parents discussing our
Right.
grades
Right.
amongst themselves, and then
Right.
kind
See?
of that trickling down to us.
And, like, if you talk about the high achievement pressure that I just mentioned, once you graduated from college, you have these placement tests, you're giving all these doctor exams, engineering exams, you want to get into the best universities in India. And mind you, it's very hard. These people, you want to pass like UPSC and all that stuff. It's extremely hard. And the pressure, dude. The pressure. And when you don't recognize that you might have imposter syndrome, or you could be someone who's suffering from this kind of a mindset, can you imagine being in that person's shoes, dude? Like, that just blows my mind.
Absolutely. Like we've all seen the news, the terrible news that we've seen. Like, and that just absolutely leads into the stigma surrounding mental health, where even when there's a high level of pressure, there isn't enough kind of support or the enough kind of, I don't know what I'm saying.
No, I get that. Like,
Yeah.
I get what you're trying to say, is that we don't have uh, a proper support to talk about mental health surrounding all those high expectations,
Right,
because
yes.
of the stigma around mental health.
Yes, there aren't systems in place already.
Yeah.
Like if there's
There are, but not enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, there are, but just not enough. And now people are okay to talk about these things. So that's why we are here and talking about imposter syndrome, because it is also a pressing issue, especially in today's age. क्योंकि पहले के ज़माने में people don't recognize these things, or maybe even if they did, they would.
The implications. So now that we've kind of talked about how Indian culture and imposter syndrome intersect, let's kind of focus on the implications
Right.
of imposter syndrome, which can definitely be awful.
Quite awful.
Like extremely awful, because it's a decrease in self-esteem, low motivation, chronic feelings of inadequacy. And I think that latter part is definitely touching upon the mental health aspect of chronic levels of not feeling like you're good enough. Like, imagine the daily toll that would take on somebody, especially somebody who's studying for an exam to get into one of like the prestigious colleges here.
Right.
And I definitely think it leads to poor performance overall, even at work or at like school, because of this like freeze, flight, and fight. Sorry, I was like, am I saying fight or not?
It's a tongue twister.
It's a tongue twister.
Freeze, flight, fight response. Yeah.
Right. And because I feel like that, what happens is somebody who has this chronic feelings of inadequacy will kind of either will either run away and just give up on the project altogether, or they'll try to fight it as much as they can, or they'll freeze.
Right.
And I feel
They'll just go in a pause stage.
a pause stage, and I feel like this is definitely something that we see a lot because of like we've all seen these tales of procrastination, people just going and procrastinating things for years and years, and I definitely relate to that.
And I feel like, yeah, and not even years and years, Vela. Just imagine, like, in our daily tasks also, like, let's say if we were to record something or if we were to make a reel, dude, like, I'm just talking about as a content creator. Even when I want to, if a brand has reached out to me and they're like, this is the concept, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And, you know, though they're not paying me enough, they want so much. Sorry, that's a whole another podcast. That's my first thought, like, freeze. What the fuck is that? Freeze, flight, and fight.
Right.
You know, like those, like, shit, what the fuck am I supposed... I'm not swearing on this podcast. So, like, what the hell am I supposed to do? You know what I'm saying? Like, you just go into that zone of feeling, what if it's not good enough? What if this outfit doesn't do well on me, and I'm not giving what I'm getting paid for. Like, you know?
And I absolutely understand because like sometimes I'd be sitting there staring at my screen writing and I'm like, what if this doesn't make sense? Even if I know
It will.
that it will make sense and I know for a fact that my writing is good.
It is. It really is, actually, guys. By the way, Vela is a really good writer, and she has some really good insights on... I don't know if y'all know this. She writes really good poems as well, and it comes from experience, and it comes from inside her heart and brain. So it's just really good. I love it, and I know that if you all ever got a chance to read it, you would love it too. So yeah, just
Thank
a side note.
Thank you, I appreciate that. But like it's one of those things where I'd be sitting there and like, does this make sense? And the thing is, it's art, and yet I'm still sitting there thinking, like, there is no logical sense to the writing that I'm doing,
Right.
Because it is art. It's an artistic venture,
Right.
right?
I agree. Like, I know when somebody's reaching out to me and they're paying me for a reel or paying me for a post, and I'm like, do I deserve this? Am I going to do enough for how much I'm getting paid for this, whatever, you know?
Right.
It's that constant questioning of your, like you said, it's art. Like, how do you measure it? Right?
Absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
so difficult. And even if it's not art, let's say I started working with my family recently, and you know, every day I'm like, oh, am I doing enough? Am I doing the proper job? Am I doing... Because especially as a woman joining a business which was not at all my forte, and I've learned the business, that I've upskilled, right? So like, am I good enough? Am I like that constant fear of being inadequate, being like, you know, incompetent? So like, I completely understand, and I'm so glad we decided this topic, because I feel like otherwise, you know, you don't get a space to talk about these things and being honest about what one might be going through.
And I think it's extremely important to talk about this because having these feelings of self-doubt definitely leads to like, you know, not getting or not reaching for the opportunities, even though you know that you're able to do them. This nagging feeling just kind of takes over.
Right.
And missing these opportunities. And like, I feel like it definitely hinders growth. For us, perhaps, or even for other people, like I feel like everybody can relate to not reaching or not like applying for that job because you think you might not be qualified enough.
Right.
Or not submitting an essay until you think it's absolutely perfect.
Right.
Like we've all been through these scenarios where we think that our work is not to the level that it should be, even though there is no determined level. There is no set goal. Like, yeah, a rubric is a goal, but like that's arbitrary. There is no set goal or set level that you need to reach in life for you to be adequate.
Right.
Because all of those are arbitrary things that you've decided.
Exactly. And I feel like, Vela, some of the things that helped me keep in track, and you know, I was able to recognize this, was seeking out to, well, not just people, but also like just having positive self-talk. I feel like we fail to do that a lot of times. Like you said, like, you know, I'm someone who's always like, nah, I don't think I can do this, right? But instead of changing the narrative about how you talk to yourself. That has helped me a lot. And
Right.
it's very important while you're doing that, you realize that you have to set realistic goals for yourself. When you feel like you could resonate to this topic, imposter syndrome, on our podcast, please ensure that don't give up like, oh no, I've done this, I feel like I can't do it just because I heard it on a podcast. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Set realistic goals for yourself.
Yeah.
Don't feel like you're incompetent when you don't achieve.
Right, and I
Yeah.
think that goes back to this level of or the natural genius, where we
Right.
talked about practice makes perfect. Like
Right.
small goals lead to you achieving them, and then bigger goals that you can set. Right, like let's say you can do 20 burpees right now, and then for next week you set yourself for doing 30, and then 40, and then
Right.
eventually you'll be able to do, I don't know, 500 burpees.
If you need to,
Or if you want to.
or if you want to.
Yeah, right.
So I think practicing positive self-talk, setting realistic goals, seeking out to a therapist who can help you if you think this is really hindering your performance, your
Absolutely.
goals. You can definitely do that, and then you can also recognize your achievements and celebrate them. I feel
Yeah.
like that helps. I personally feel like I was able to get over this mindset of mine that I'm not adequate enough or whatever, or when I wrote down things that I've achieved in the last 4 years in India, right? Like, what did I do after coming back from India? Like just
Right.
celebrating those little things, recognizing what you've done.
Celebrating your wins,
Yeah.
or even creating like a gratitude journal.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a daily thing. Like
Yeah.
you can do a weekly or a monthly thing where I've accomplished this many things that I've done.
Exactly.
Like it'll show you in a kind of quantifiable way that you are capable of things.
Exactly. So
Right.
true. So true. I agree 110% that recognizing things and being grateful for that and celebrating small wins is also something that can help you overcome this nagging voice in the back of your head.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So, guys, that was our take on imposter syndrome, and we really hope that you were able to find some solace in the podcast.
We absolutely loved like reading your stories and seeing how just open and vulnerable all of you were under our body dysmorphia podcast. And we'd kind of love to hear your insights, or even just your opinions, obviously, and or your tips if you think that something that we could learn or the community could learn.
Exactly. Thank you. And please like, share, and subscribe. We would love for our community to grow. And
Absolutely.
absolutely. And like always, the sources will be in the description. Thank you for joining us today. We wanted to keep this podcast quick and
Crisp.
crisp.